Peter Robinson and Martin McGuinness were presenting a united front in Europe this week, meeting the President of the European Union Commission for talks about how Stormont can maximise the EU funding it receives. So far, so diplomatic. But the question on everyone's lips, was it going to translate into more cash?
The whole purpose of the task force report was to equip Northern Ireland so that it would be able to draw down funds from other funds where we have to actually compete with other regions and to ensure that we had all the skills necessary to enable us to do that. So our response quite clearly is that we're up for it. We want to be involved in a very full way in ensuring that we get all the benefits that we can from Europe.
I think we will be taking back far greater access than ever we have before. Far greater contact in terms of officials and so forth, and obviously the intellectual and emotional engagement of people of the standing of President Barroso in our situation, and obviously that bodes well for the support that we are currently getting and will get financially through to 2013.
Like I said, so far so diplomatic, but in reality Northern Ireland might have had its day in the sun when it comes to raking in EU cash. By 2013, well over €100 million will have been paid to Northern Ireland from the EU through the three peace funds. But while the first two funds brought in more than €900 million, Peace 3 is smaller, just €330 million. Notice how those figures are reducing. The problem is that when the peace funds started, the European Union was half the size it is now. So when it came to helping Europe's poorest regions, including Northern Ireland, there was plenty to go round. Now the EU has 27 member states, many of them from Eastern and Central Europe, and compared to Northern Ireland, they really are poor. Which means inevitably, they're also consuming more of the European Union's resources. Jim Dougal is a former head of the European Commission in Northern Ireland and Britain.
I think that the very fact that we are still being given peace money in 2009 from a programme which started in 1994 means that the politicians have worked very well. But I think that with the demise, and I think the peace programme will end at some point, with the demise of that, what they need to do is look at other programmes which they can tap into, and also look at other regions in Europe with whom they can partner to see what they can do for each other and what they can get from the European Union to help both regions, if you like.
But that is also problematic. Who forges those links? Northern Ireland has 3 MEPs to represent it on the European Parliament. But as part of the UK, it's also represented by the UK Commissioner on the European Commission. And now we have our own devolved administration, with the First and Deputy First Minister speaking directly to the President of the European Union.
There aren't many leaders from regions of bigger sovereign countries that will get an audience with President Barroso, the President of the European Commission. That is an advantage, I think, in terms of the ability of Northern Ireland to politically punch above its weight in terms of the access it can get to the world's political leaders. The drawback, and you do encounter this sometimes in Brussels, it is the tiers of political leadership that find themselves here.
In terms of the job for our politicians, it's not only to go to Europe and try and persuade the Commission to work on their behalf, it's also to go to London and maybe even to Dublin and persuade the various ministers who will be sitting at the council, whether it be health or agriculture, whatever the council is, to make sure that they work on the behalf of Northern Ireland as well. Now that's a big job.
And the other big job they have is to sell the European Union to Northern Ireland. In another city, not that far from Brussels, in the last European elections, only 51% of people voted. So what does the EU mean in Belfast?
I think they tend to think that they can dictate to us what we can do rather than allow us to make our own decisions.
It also has an adverse effect with some of their daft little things that go through their parliament, straight bananas and things like that. They're just daft.
Does it grieve you that much of our coverage of Europe gets reduced to Eurocrats say our bananas have to be straight?
It does, and it does, I think, annoy most of those Commission officials and most of those pro-Europeans who know that most of these things are Euromyths, that they're not true, and they don't happen. But I think that Europe probably needs to do a lot more to try and ensure that the benefits of the European Union, the benefits of being members of the European Union, are seen and explained fairly simply.
Some would say here the union should be far more gung-ho, it should get out there, it should make itself more transparent and more visible in the member states. Many people here would love to do that. The flip side is there's a significant body of opinion that says, hang on a minute, this is a club of sovereign states. It should be distant, it should be kept a reasonable it should retain a reasonable detachment from national capitals, because national capitals are still ultimately in control.
On a beautiful day like this, who wouldn't want to be at the heart of the European Union? And if being a member state is all about maximising your economy, well, we should be up for it. But in the current economic climate, cold hard cash may no longer be so readily served up. It could be time to see the European Union in a different light.